Okay, good morning, everybody out there in La La Land. And just a quick check on the visual and the sound, please, so that everything's set up smoothly. And I noticed some people from Sydney, Australia have got up early, so well done to you guys for getting up at presumably 4:30 in the morning to join us. Okay, so there seems to be sound and visual, so that's good. And you may notice I'm in a different setting this morning because, as I mentioned last session, that there was going to be a special guest. And so I've actually invited my Dharma sister, Ayya Jitindriya. I requested that she lead the session today, which she kindly agreed to. So it'll be good for you to hear some Dharma from someone else and also from someone very experienced. Ayya Jitindriya has been a monastic, has a long history as a monastic, as well as a practicing and trained Buddhist psychotherapist in the past. So she brings a rich history, practice history and knowledge, her teachings. So I hope you enjoy listening to her guided meditations today, and then also having an opportunity to ask questions from her. So we'll keep a similar format. And then if we're lucky at the end, we might have a third special guest if she stops snoring and agrees to get up. She's not a very good nun a lot of the times. But she's actually the best teacher as well. So we might have a visit from her later. Okay, so without any further ado, with gratitude to Ayya Jitindriya, and please enjoy today's session with her. And I'll be here to assist with the Q&A thread, because that probably be a bit too much for her to navigate the first time around. So I'll be sharing the questions that you ask her at the end of the meditation. All the best, and I'll just turn the camera back to her.
Whoops, sorry, just knocked the mic. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we've got people joining from all over the world. So I'm happy to join you this morning at Venerable Jayasara's request. And she'll be here with us and navigating the technology. So we will leave the screen up so Jayasara can check if there's any issues as we go. I have a bit of a softer voice than Jayasara, so just checking if you can hear me okay. If not, let me know. And I'll just bring you a little closer. Hello from Scotland and all over the place. So this morning I'll just guide us in a half hour or so. Very good, people can hear me. A half hour or so meditation, primarily getting embodied, bringing awareness to our body and breath, and we'll see how the Dharma flows from there, and half an hour or so of Q&A afterwards. So many people around the world, in whatever room or situation you find yourself in right now. This is our Dharma seat, where the body is. But the mind, our minds are currently connecting in present time, this present moment awareness, which is ultimately timeless. We're able to connect in this way, and this is the inner Dharma seat where we're going to rest for a while. So if you're comfortable to close your eyes or lower your eyes a little bit. I want to ask you just to bring your awareness to the body, however you're seated or lying down, if you have any pain in the body, but preferably sitting up to keep that energy awake. However your body is, just bring awareness to the sensations you're feeling right now. You'll become aware of a whole range of sensations initially, a cascade of sensations that we're usually familiar with, which we call my body, or we label my body. But often this is just a peripheral awareness. So right now I want to invite you to bring your full awareness to receive this experience of embodiment in full consciousness. Receive the sensations into awareness. Or in other words, open your mind, open your heart to this experience of embodiment, however it is for you right now. You may become aware of various sensations, sense of energy in the shape of the body. You might become aware of various tensions or tightness in the muscles of the body, pressure points where you're sitting. And you'll become aware of the movement of the in and out breath, this natural, automatic function of the body. The body breathes all by itself. It takes in nutriment through the air, into the lungs, into the bloodstream. And the body expels the spent air, the carbon dioxide. You don't have to think about breathing or trying to make it happen in the right way. It just happens. So try to bring your awareness to this whole felt sensation of the in and out breath as it naturally happens. Relax around the breathing. And just start to notice this function of the body in more full awareness. Bringing our awareness to the in and out breath. This was one of the first methods taught by the Buddha to help to relax and calm both the body and the mind. The natural movement, the natural function. You don't have to do it. You can relax whilst having this foundation or anchor for awareness and attention in the present moment. And it's a relaxing rhythm. If you allow it just to be, if you become aware of any pain or tightness in the muscles of the body, just receive that in awareness as it is. Relax any tendency to tighten around pain, to resist it. And just breathe with any sensations you become aware of. With a very kindly, gentle attention and intention, just to be here, to be open, to relax, to be present. So, however the mind is right now, there may be thoughts racing through. Just know that as it is. If it's a restless mind, just know this is what a restless mind feels like. If the mind feels peaceful, just know this is what a peaceful mind feels like. If you are aware of any emotion at all, sadness, excitement, grief, anxiety, just simply know this is what it feels like in this moment. And let it be connected with the breath, your awareness of the breath, of the in and out breathing. The thoughts are mere momentary sensations, really, mental movements. Various emotions or moods of the heart. Are also structured by thought, but they have a more lingering sensate experience. But similarly, they move, they're never the same. Like a moving weather pattern through the atmosphere. Moods, emotions, and thoughts, sensations They appear, they arise in consciousness, in awareness. And if let be, they stay for a moment or more and disappear, dissolve. As a wave rises from the sea and settles back down into the sea. The energy, the impulses, the movement of the mind rises in a thought, in felt sensations, in emotions. Each of these conditioning each other, but really never separate from the ocean of mind, rising and falling in the ocean of mind. In the fabric of awareness itself. So as we breathe with our experience, see if you can have this attitude of observing, letting it be as it is, but anchoring attention through awareness of the breath. So we have this base which becomes more and more stable, even as the surface of the waves, surface of the ocean moves in waves. There is this stability connected to awareness of the breath, awareness of the body. So let your awareness or attention, if you like, let your attention rest more and more on the sensations of the breath coming and going. Let the surface ripples of thoughts gradually recede into the background of the mind. An awareness of the rhythm of the in and out breath more to the foreground of awareness. And encourage yourself to rest. Let the mind rest. But rest in lucid awareness. If there's a tendency to nod off into sleep, just be aware of that. Perhaps take a deeper breath, straighten the body a little, or open the eyes a little if you're feeling sleepy. But allowing yourself to relax, Giving full permission to this mind and body to relax into this present moment and rest in full awareness. It's like finding a point of balance within this resting of awareness, or resting of the mind in awareness. There's various ways we can talk about this. But eventually, as the thinking mind begins to settle, we find this sense of balance within, both mentally and physically. And quite naturally, certain thoughts or sounds might distract, might draw our attention to those impressions. But as we've established this focus, this gentle focus on the in and out breath, the tendency now is for the mind to stay connected to that. Even as a boat whose anchor is dropped feels the subtle movement of the surface waves. But there's this strong holding that goes right through to the bottom of the ocean. So the boat never moves far away. This quality is the quality of mindfulness and samadhi beginning to develop more strongly. Or what's called a unification of the mind, where it's beginning to cohere a little more in a simpler focus, whereas it's usually quite fragmented with many objects of attention. Here we're allowing the mind's energy to rest more in a simple present time awareness. And when you feel this energy of restfulness or even just a slight calming. Let yourself be fully aware of that. Taste this feeling of calm, even if it's momentary or subtle. Even just the result of sitting still for an extended time can help produce this feeling of settledness. So becoming aware of that helps it to strengthen further. Breathing with that feeling of calm, even if it's only subtle right now. And just continue to notice as other things come into attention, come into our awareness. Sensations, thoughts, sounds. We can start to notice the kind of impermanent nature or transient nature of these things in terms of their appearance in awareness. They have a momentary point of contact, a momentary arising. Appear and subside. Arise and pass. Now here, now gone. Just momentary impressions. So momentary impressions that we don't have to hang on to and we don't have to push away. We just see them as they are, appearing, disappearing. Some impressions may be louder than others, may draw our attention in to focus on their details and proliferate for a while until we wake up to the fact of their momentariness, until we recognize the breath sensation again, or until we recognize this present moment awareness, which never moves. We practice to recognize this awareness that never moves. Though it may appear that it moves with various sense impressions. In fact, in its depths, in its essence, it doesn't move. We learn to recognize and rest in this nature of mind. Until it is fully disclosed to us. Until we fully awaken to that nature. Now, when I say awareness doesn't move, and just be aware these are words attempting to point to an experience or something that can be known. But they're just words which also arise and cease or appear and disappear in awareness. To say awareness doesn't move in some senses, akin to saying space doesn't move. The characteristic barely applies because it's beyond movement and stillness, which is a duality of words or concept. And yet, it can point to something to be recognized. That within our experience, which does not appear and disappear which does not fundamentally change, which does not come and go with a thought or a sensation or a concept. But rather knows these things as transient. Yet at the same time is beyond transience, beyond change, beyond stillness. Yet can be known, can be experienced, can be rested in. Can be known as the deepest nature of mind. The very fabric of awareness or reality. So as we begin to bring this meditation to a close, wherever you find yourself in this moment internally, just connect again with the movement of the breath. And come more and more into your experience of the body, embodied breathing. And slowly open your eyes, coming back into this shared space of the screen. So I hope that was enough for everyone to feel guided in that meditation. Of course, guided meditations can take any kind of direction, depending on the intuition that's coming through the teacher. And so I'm very happy to respond to some questions now. And then Jayasara is going to tune into the interface. So she's going to sort out the questions as they come through and get me to answer them. Okay. So people are just thank you, a pleasure, a pleasure. Any questions coming up, either around that meditation or around the Dharma teachings, please feel free to ask.
You also have a beautiful voice, says Marion. Lovely smile you have. Sometimes it just takes a little while for people to
type their questions, yes. So we're just waiting on the stream.
And that wasn't me snoring, by the way. That was darling heart cat snoring.
We've got cats snoring in the background, but that was Jayasara blowing her nose.
That's me blowing my nose. Okay, so there's a question here from Sanjita. Could you give an exposition or series on the Anapanasati
Sutta?
Series? Do you mean in the future? Sure she can.
How do you perceive the now as it is for you?
Yeah, so you can see the questions. How do you perceive?
Even during the session, I could sense my anxiety eating my mind.
So that's two different questions. Yeah.
So I'll just go with those first couple of questions. Anxiety eating my mind, that's a nice way of talking about it. As yesterday in my meditation, we were being led by our local monk, Kempola, in a meditation on compassion and Mother's Day. And I became very aware at some level of the fundamental anxiety of beings, the fundamental fear and anxiety of beings, which is really a product of, let's say, of this sense of self, sense of separate self. If we have a perception, which we all have this conditioned perception of separate sense of self, separate ego self, and this naturally gives rise to fear and anxiety because of a sense of separateness, of duality, and this sense of this vulnerable being that's almost hardwired into this body, if you like, on the level of survival instinct. And that gets conditioned over time and through different circumstances in our minds, and is makes itself felt through this experience of anxiety or fear, even at a very subtle level. Even if we don't necessarily have a chronic condition of anxiety, if you look into the sense of self in a dualistic sense and this idea of existing separately, it seems there's this fundamental anxiety, fear of destruction, fear of hurt, fear of pain, and the way we have to conduct ourselves in order to avoid what we perceive as the unwanted or the painful or the negative. And this gets compounded in our life. And then if we have negative mental, emotional, physical experiences, if they don't get resolved appropriately in awareness, that can further condition anxiety, provoking responses or just more anxiety. There's a psychological term called the ambiguity of existence, that we're never quite sure what's going to happen, if it's going to be pleasant or painful, in this next moment. And it can condition this sense of anxiousness because of that ambiguity. And this is the fundamental malaise the Buddha is pointing to as the experience of dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. Even if pleasant feelings come, we can't hang on to them. We can't keep it that way, but in our delusion, we try to do it. And this creates a fundamental sense of anxiety, or the need to somehow control our environment and our experience, which is actually ultimately uncontrollable, not within our control. Nevertheless, what the Buddha actually did discover, and probably those who were enlightened before him, is that this fundamental feeling of anxiety or dukkha is not a permanent condition. It's something that is conditioned, and as we become aware of it and awaken to it, it is seen to be another compounded thought or conditioned sensation, conditioned reactivity. And the mind, our awareness, can settle beneath it or beyond that, can know an experience that lies beyond this experience of anxiety. And this is what our practice is about, to recognize this fundamental unconditioned nature, which is free of this fear, anxiety, of dukkha. But it dispels the dukkha, the experience of dukkha, when it is known directly, when we become fully aware of that. And this is the ending, what we call the ending of ignorance. We awake, the mind awakens to its true nature, which is beyond this dukkha. In the meantime, we are in the process of becoming more aware of this underlying sense of anxiety. So with this graphic impression, anxiety eating my mind, that's what it can feel like sometimes. So, but be aware that this is a conditioned process that's appearing in the mind. As you become more aware of it, not pushing it away, but learning to breathe with this experience. Say, what does this anxiety feel? What does this anxiety feel like? Where do I feel it in my body? Can I breathe with it just as it is? As we bring more awareness to that, with an attitude of kindness, acceptance, what we can start to notice is that its character starts to change. Just through the nature of bringing awareness to this experience, but in an embodied way. There's a way that you can focus on anxiety and it kind of increases the feeling of it. It's like we get sucked into it and the monster or the object gets bigger. So actually we want to bring more connectedness to the present moment awareness of embodiment, not pushing away the anxiety, but being aware of it simultaneously. And as we learn to breathe with it, the fear, anxiety begins to settle a little, because the mind is reacting less, feeling more calm, and its character. So then we notice it's not permanent. It's a conditioned experience. It's not who and what I am ultimately. And that's a great relief when that is experienced. So I just want to encourage you to persist in that exploration and keep an intention to stay present, connected with the present moment through embodied awareness, as this will help bring that energy out of the anxious mind, which is a series of thoughts co-conditioning the sensations in the body, keeping the mind and body anxious, sending messages that there's something to be scared of between the mind and the body. As soon as we tune into the calm, or perceive some element of calm in the breath, or some element of resting in the present moment, that can start to shift and change. So there's a lot more that could be said about that, but to have some other questions, I'll leave it there for now.
So there's a question. Can you explain anatta, or the non-self concept in Buddhism? And if there is no self, what is it that incarnates?
Oh, well, that's a big question.
Well, you like the big ones.
So that could take up the next half hour, at least. So in a nutshell, what is this concept of anatta? So just as I was describing in that previous response about anxiety, as we begin to see these experiences as changeable, as impermanent, as conditioned, we start to realize they're not who and what we are. Whereas previously we've been up close, they've been so in our face, if you like. The conditioned habit of mind is to identify with these habitual experiences that come through the mind. So what we call, as a general term, these conditions, these mental conditions, mental movements, have become so habitual over, if you want to think of it in this lifetime or many lifetimes. And we've also developed, the mind has developed the habit of clinging to them or identifying with them. That is, because it doesn't know anything else, it hasn't yet awakened fully to its true nature, it identifies with these conditions that appear in the mind. And the more it identifies and clings to such things, this sense of ego self develops around them. So I am an anxious person, or I am a bad person, or I am a good person, or I am whatever label or description you want to add there, depending on what the mind is attaching to and identifying with. It says, I am this. It's a learned pattern. It is so, so deep. And so in actuality, these are thought patterns, mental movements, some with deep karmic roots, so they appear intractable. But the meditation is about observing the coming and going nature of everything that moves through the mind. Absolutely everything that appears disappeared. That is a what's the word? A kind of undeniable truth when it's seen within your own nature, within your own mind. This is why we focus on exploring the Dharma or the truth or the reality as it manifests or appears within our own mind, because we need to have this direct experience of what we call clinging and identification, which is happening regularly. But in contrast to that, when we really perceive the impermanent nature of such thoughts, objects, emotions, or at least the changeable nature, the unreliable nature, the unstable nature of such things, in that they're morphing all the time, that which knows those things as such, as I said in the meditation, by contrast is perceived to be still and stable, not that changing nature, those changing conditions. So this is where the insight into anatta begins to coalesce. It can coalesce suddenly or gradually through small insights into the nature of this mind, both at the conditioned and unconditioned. To see that these changing phenomena in and of themselves aren't ultimately who and what we are. They're passing conditions. And as passing conditions, if they're not reinforced, they gradually fade out. When an underlying factor that supports a condition in existence is no longer present, it cannot manifest, it cannot appear. Yeah. So these conditions are karmically driven, if you like. They have a momentum. So you can maybe have an insight into something as changing and disappearing and think, that's it, it'll never come back. Now I know it's impermanent, but it has a momentum, so it may keep reappearing. So then again, this becomes our practice, to keep recognizing impermanence and the not-self nature. So the not-self nature is simply pointing out its transience. Something cannot be described as self if it is not a fundamental, unchanging condition of being, at least within this paradigmatic teaching. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So any other aspect to that question that I missed? Not yet.
So there's a kind of a simpler question here. Is there sometimes a bad time to go on silent retreat, like a Vipassana retreat? I'm going through a breakup and I'm concerned that the retreat will be too much to handle, all the anxious thoughts that arise. But I think you kind of spoken a lot to just how to work with that process.
So is it the right time to go on retreat? So just to address that, because sometimes the mind can feel, you know, like, oh, this is a great time to be alone, be on retreat. Sometimes the mind can be scared about, or you can experience fear about facing the mind if there's turmoil and strong emotions. But let me just say, you can't judge what the experience is going to be like based on what you feel now. So I can't say one way or the other whether it's a good time for you to go on retreat. It's something you just need to feel out for yourself, but don't believe what the mind is telling you right now. We can sometimes think an experience is going to be really difficult. Nevertheless, we move towards it and it actually works out fine. Or sometimes the opposite. You think this is going to be so great and you move towards it and it turns out to be really difficult. We can never know. So learning to kind of trust the process of your practice, but in present time, recognize thoughts as conditioned phenomena. Sometimes it's very difficult to sense intuitively around a particular decision, what the right thing is to do. We don't really know, but we can know in that moment. We have conditioned fear responses, fear of something that's might be painful. And we also have a lot of fear about making the wrong decision. So just look into that. I would say that a supported retreat, a group retreat where you're guided by a teacher and you have a sangha around you, is certainly a much more supportive situation if you happen to go through difficulties. And sometimes having that input from a teacher can actually be very helpful and very supportive, no matter what your experience is. So it could also be a fruitful time. In my experience, the difficult times have actually turned out to be the most fruitful. So if I knew in advance that they would be difficult, I probably would have avoided them and thereby potentially missed out on certain fruits. So trust the process and just keep your heart aligned with the desire to awaken, which isn't from fear, but from your commitment to truth.
Great. Maybe one more question? So there's a series of questions from Brian here. I'll just read it and see how you can respond to the connected.
If you speak a bit more loudly, so.
Yeah, it seems in some moments that disidentification without thoughts and feelings is readily accessible, but in other moments when the suffering is more acute, this doesn't seem to be the case. Can there be genuine disidentification with mind where it is genuinely clear that well-being truly doesn't depend on any content in thoughts or feelings?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a joy to discover that well-being with that perspective does not depend on what appears in the mind. That's the real insight into anatta, when you realize that there is this karmic momentum with thoughts and sensations appearing. But when you know clearly that's the unfolding of karma, but it's not who and what you are, there can be a well-being, a sense of well-being. It's not the words disidentification and detachment can sometimes evoke a sense of disconnect. So it's quite difficult to convey. We usually use the term non-identification or don't not identifying. So it's not like pulling so far back that it's like not connecting. It's actually a sense of clarity that these things that appear just don't stick, because that in the mind, which usually is like Velcro and kind of out of conditioned habit, attaches and feels, oh, I can't, this is me and mine for sure. That just doesn't arise in those clear moments of non-identification. It's a bit like Rick Hanson uses the terms Velcro for when there's attachment. Things stick to the mind like Velcro, or slip off the mind like Teflon. But he uses that in a slightly different context about we tend to stick to the negative like Velcro and let the good slip away like Teflon. But we can also say that identification is like that Velcro effect. It feels so immediate and habitual. But when there's clear perspective, when there's this non-clinging, which is really not us, it's not us not clinging or not identifying, it's not us holding back. It's actually that point of the mind where the mind is resting happily in its true nature, for want of a better word, because words create duality. It's hard to describe, but it's resting on its dais, it's resting happily in its own nature. And then whatever appears in the mind through karmic momentum, it's just allowed, it's just comes and goes, and there's no sticking. So what's gone there is that sticking effect. So it's quite a joy to see things come and go and not stick, because there's a recognition of this stuff as just being karmic momentum, but not who and what I am. It doesn't mean one is unresponsive in the world, but at least in meditation we can feel it doesn't stick. But there may be conditioned appearances that in our life we still need to respond to, but that then when it's not sticking, it comes out of wisdom and compassion, comes out of an intuitive wisdom and compassion, rather than a reactivity to either the pleasure or pain that we might be habitually attached to. So this point of balance, of non-attachment, of non-clinging, it can't be forced, but we can learn what it is to, that's why the Buddha initially starts with this focus on learn what dukkha is, learn what clinging is, learn what attachment and identification is, because until we see that process that's happening in the mind, we don't understand it. We're just habitually caught in it and thinking it's me and mine. But as we observe, as we understand how the mind sticks to stuff and how it can rest out of it, this sticking and resting, we start to understand that internal mechanism. We start to understand what supports the resting and what actually conditions more of the clinging. And these are the path factors that we learn from practice. So that's probably as much as I can say right now. Did that address most of the question?
Yeah, wonderful. Yes. So shall we leave it there?
So we'll leave the questions there for now. Maybe one day we can do, Jasara and I can do a Q&A session at a different time. But for now, and then we can address more questions in general. For now, we're going to give you a glimpse of Kat. Lovely to be with you this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening.
And thanks from Kat, who is doing the snoring. Can you see all the people? Can you see all the colours on the screen? Hello, everybody. I'm very relaxed, aren't you? All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and thank you very much to Ayya Jitindriya for her wonderful wisdom and giving. And I hope you enjoyed the change and learned a lot from that today. And we'll see you in a fortnight. So may you all be well and happy. And do you want to say anything else? Do you want to say anything else?
Yes, may you all be well and continue in your practice with confidence. The 3 points.
And she says, just relax. Everything's just fine. Everything, what did you say? Everything's just fine, isn't it? Even when you're ancient like me, you just be relaxed. All right.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.